Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to be finishing chapter 2 today. We're reading verses 24 through 26, just 3 short verses, and yet it is the fulcrum. It's the pivot point. It's where it's the point of leverage, where everything changes, not overnight, not immediately, but where the ship starts to turn around and head in the other direction. Solomon has used his life as an experiment to find the answer to the question, what should we be doing in this life under the sun, this human life? And like any good experiment, he has been very precise in his investigation, and he has set boundaries for it, and we're existing in a closed loop, which is life under the sun, life under the sky. He's not permitted eternity in. And to this point, he hasn't really permitted God to come in. He mentions God as creator in chapter 1, but only to say God created this place, but we've just messed it up. So that's the only reference to God. God himself doesn't really factor in to anything until verse 24. And in verse 24, things change. He's still not going to allow eternity to factor into our equations. He's going to make that clear in the next chapter, in verse 11. But he lets God in, and God remains. And he's going to, with these verses, start to find an answer. Start to make some preliminary observations that build on each other. Start to find that certain things like work for its own sake, enjoying the gifts God has given you because they are gifts from God, establishing relationships and maintaining them, sharing what you've been given, doing your best for its own sake. Those things, they are worthwhile and productive. That light is better than darkness, that wisdom is better than folly, until he comes to the very last 2 verses and says, the conclusion is, when all has been considered. Let's read verses 24 through 26 of chapter 2. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. Life in general has ceased to be a striving after the wind, but displeasing God is now the striving after the wind. Because the gifts we have from God. James chapter 1, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no shifting shade or shadow. James 1:17. He's made this realization. Listen, it's like his dad. Let me go back a minute. It's like what his dad said in Psalm 3, whenever Solomon's brother Absalom was trying to usurp the throne. He said, I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning because you take care of me. And Solomon is saying, how can we, just to get up, to live life for a day, and to have a meal to eat, to have the sustenance that you need, and to take joy in that day. Those are all gifts from God. They're not nothing, they're something. And he's made this realization that some of the things I've been saying are not nothing at all. I made them nothing in the way I treated them and my attitude towards them and the way I've lived my life. But they're not nothing. They're something. They're gifts from God. And if you enjoy them as such, then they are valuable. That's an enormous realization. You don't have to build reservoirs, but you can if you have the power to, and you build it for the glory of God and for the benefit of others. Yeah, that's a gift. But just getting up in the morning and having, food to eat and some joy in the day. Those are joy. Those are gifts that God has given to us. And although He says it, we draw the conclusion from everything else He said, gifts that we don't deserve. And yet we're given them. And to recognize that, to take joy in that, and to understand that there is a difference between a life lived to please God and a life lived to not please God. He has not introduced the notion of eternal punishment yet, which He does in the very last verse. But He does, He has already not, He has introduced God, the joy that we take in a life lived for God, the gifts of God, but also the judgment of God have all been introduced in these 3 verses. And this makes all the difference. Next time we're going to read that poem that we know and love so well. And I think that we understand, despite our attempts not to. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. We'll pick up with chapter 3, verse 1 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.